Good afternoon, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Have a good day and God bless you. Let's get into the news. And it looks like the Paul Pelosi story is not going away anytime soon for Nancy Pelosi, as much as yet she would have hoped for this thing to have disappeared. It's still not going away. That's because there's a coalition of news organizations that are seeking to get the police cam footage from the incident where apparently David Dupree somehow forced his way in through the back door of the House of the Policies and was found in his underwear, of course Popolo, Seasons, underwear, all this stuff. Nothing was adding up, and then they wouldn't let us see him. As he entered court, nobody is looking at this as the event that it actually was, because then it would show that Nancy Pelosi was strong-arming the media, the police, to not mention her husband's extra playtime. That shouldn't be seen. That is what Nancy Pelosi was doing. Of course, he was using the way that the federal government to ensure that would take place, and now we have news media that's actually seeking to release that tape, and of course, nothing would disinfect like transparency, and transparency is not taking place right now with the Pelosi case. So let's go and take a look what we have here. It says here to Paul Pelosi scandal is back in the news to cover up continues. That's right. Paul Pelosi scandal is not dead. To Pelosi has wanted it to die, but not so fast. As you may recall, Paul Pelosi was injured and taken to the hospital on the early morning of October 28, 2022. Pelosi was not alone. A man named David that Pepe was also sent to the hospital. The story that surrounded the event that led them to being sent to the hospital was suspect, and it changed over time. According to the first police conference, Pepe was charged with burglary. But the police never mentioned how he entered the house, and the second police conference, and police confirmed that Pepe forced entry into the rear door of the home. Then, of course, the Gateway Pundit reported that nothing was adding up. There was no doubt that his home had a security system. The system likely includes motion detectors as well. Most homes do in this day and age, and the movement near the house or broken glass would immediately be registered at a surveillance company, then in turn would notify the police or be encountered. Also, there are likely police cars circling the neighborhood where to close the loop. The police reported that Paul Pelosi made the call to the police. Paul Pelosi never shared that the home was broken into. He also referred to the so-called intruder by his first name, David. That's right. Yeah, a lot of people just kind of skimmed over that this is the third person in line to the presidency. Her home would be surveilled and would have all kinds of measures to ensure this exact thing wouldn't have happened, right? There's also questions about the event being a burglary. Pepe reportedly forced entry into the rear door, but video shows that the glass was on the outside of the home on the stairs behind the house. If the window was broken from the outside, wouldn't the glass be on the floor on the inside of the house? Additionally, it had also been reported that Pepe was in his underwear when police arrived. This means that most probably took off his clothes inside the house. This is because anyone walking around in that neighborhood, his neighborhood, in their underwear would immediately be arrested. This is not something that someone could just do in that neighborhood. Also, why did Pa Pelosi refer to him as a friend on the phone? It sounded like someone else let the police into the home who wasn't. Why did this person not call the police when the house was supposedly broken into? Was there more than one other person in the home? The police later said this was not the case. We also never learned what injuries did Pepe incurred. He too was sent to the hospital. And in the first press release, the police mentioned that they worked on his injuries before sending him to the hospital along with Paul Pelosi. But that has not been the case. The police have covered everything up. We couldn't even see Pepe when he entered court. And in response to the lack of transparency in this case, several news organizations are literally suing to get access to the video surrounding the event. A coalition of news organizations, including the Associated Press, filed a court motion in San Francisco seeking access to the evidence against a man charged in last year's attack on the former U.S. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi husband. The coalition also includes the New York Times, as the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, the San Francisco Chronicle de Presse Democrat, CNN, Fox News, CBS, ABC, NBC, KKED, and NPR member radio station. The U.S. House may also have the legal right to obtain the Capitol Police coverage of the event. They should do the same. If an innocent man is being framed and sent to prison for life, who was invited into Pelosi's home early one Friday morning, October Americans should all know this event has become the crowning point of Pelosi's tyrannical reign. Absolutely. So we'll see if those news organizations will be able to recover that video or if the video will be mysteriously erased or lost before it's actually handed over. I wouldn't doubt it, to be honest with you. So we'll see how the story continues to play out. But don't forget, the story's still ongoing. And this is some big news, it's real. It's not a phenomenon. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not voodoo witch doctor stuff of some person's imagination. The Trump curse is freaking real. Nearly every single celebrity that has gone publicly and became political and started attacking Donald Trump ends up going down. I mean, it's probably less the Trump curse, some sort of ethereal phenomenon, and probably more than anything, just career opportunists, sociopathic type celebrities that view an opportunity to use Donald Trump as an excuse to get publicity and to earn brownie points on Twitter and in the media, just objectively bad manipulative people. It's probably more so that than it is the Trump curse, but the idea of this Trump curse is so satisfying. They all end up going down or going broke or getting cancelled. All the people who tell us Donald Trump is such a terrible person he belongs in jail never really ends well, and it's certainly not ending well for Alec Baldwin, the guy who for I think 3 years straight, if I'm not mistaken, mocked Donald Trump on SNL and went on various talk shows telling us constantly how bad of a person Donald Trump was. Well, he's just been charged with manslaughter in the Fatal Rush shooting as more information has been revealed. And it turns out, prosecutors are finding him legally culpable. If it was just an accident, I highly doubt they would have increased the charges and would be charging him with involuntary manslaughter. But it seems as though there was an element of negligence and this man has frickin' going down. Alright, folks. Take a look at the headline breaking Alec Baldwin to be charged with 2 charges of involuntary manslaughter and fatal rush shooting. Baldwin shot and killed 42-year-old Helena Hutchins and injured 48-year-old Joel Souza on the movie set of A Rust in Santa Fe, Mexico, October 2021. Baldwin pulled the trigger on the set of Rust according to the FBI analysis. However, he blamed the producer's death on Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the armor and props assistant on the set of Rust. Hannah Gutierrez Reed will also face criminal charges. If any one of these 3 people, Alec Baldwin, Hannah Gutierrez Reed or David Halls, had done their job, Helena Hutchinson would still be alive today. It's simple. Andrea Reed, the special prosecutor appointed by the DA to the case, said in the statement. According to Fox News, the evidence clearly shows a pattern of criminal disregard for safety on the Rust film set in New Mexico. Yeah, by the way, the article earlier said Santa Fe, Mexico. I figured as I was reading that wasn't correct, but it's Santa Fe, New Mexico. Although typos in the world of journalism are pretty unavoidable. Anyways, let's continue. In New Mexico, there was no room for film sets that don't take our state's commitment to gun safety and public safety seriously. Deadline reported Alec Baldwin and armor Hannah Gutierrez Reed will face criminal charges for the October 21, 2021 fatal shooting of Rust cinematographer Helena Hutchinson. The Santa Fe district attorney said this morning, close to 16 months after Baldwin took the life of Hutchins and wounded the movie's director Joel Souza with a loaded gun on the set of the indie western Rust. New Mexico's first Judicial District Attorney Mark Cormack Always Today has finally unveiled her decision as to who should be charged and not charged in the tragic incident. After a thorough review of evidence and the laws of the state of New Mexico, I have determined that there is sufficient evidence to file criminal charges against Alec Baldwin and other members of the film crew on my watch. No one is above the law and everyone deserves justice. That decision distorts Helena Hutchinson's tragic death and represents a terrible miscarriage of justice. Mr. Baldwin had no reason to believe that there was a live bullet in the gun or anywhere on the movie set. He relied on the professionals with whom he worked, who assured him the gun did not have live rounds. "We will fight these charges and we will win," said Alec Baldwin's lawyer in a statement to TMZ. Now that specific statement from Alec Baldwin's lawyer is bringing up some extra questions because based on reporting as we know right now, in addition to the bullet that killed Mrs. Helena Hutchinson, investigators found 5 additional live rounds of ammunition mingled among the movie's props and costumes to loose. 45 bullets were discovered on top of a prop cart. A third was in a bandolier worn by the actor Jensen Ackles. And a fourth was in the gun belt worn by Alec Baldwin, and a fifth was found in a box of dummy ammunition with Gutierrez Reed's fingerprints on it. Dummy rounds are fake bullets that look real but are completely inert and have no gunpowder in them. And so I guess we got to get to the bottom of this, because Alec Baldwin's lawyers saying that Mr. Baldwin had no reason to believe that there was a live bullet in the gun or anywhere on the movie set, yet he had one in his gun belt. Now the question is, did he know that he had a live round in his possession, or that there was one in his revolver? Were they playing around on the movie set mixing dummy rounds with live ammunition, just messing around shooting at MTB in cans? Because if that's the case, if they were playing around with guns with live ammunition totally nonchalantly and not being extremely careful, not using completely separate weapons in a totally different location, and being extremely careful to not mix up any of the ammo, and even then that seems kind of damn sketchy. You're on a movie set pointing weapons at other human beings, you probably shouldn't introduce live ammunition into the ammo pool in that situation. I mean, it's totally irresponsible. But if that's the case, then that is absolutely criminal negligence. And whoever is found responsible based on testimony, based on what was happening, based on any type of irresponsible behavior on that movie set, well, then they should absolutely face charges and face the consequences of those irresponsible actions, because those might be the exact actions that lead to the loss of life and life-altering terrible injury of another film crew member behind Mrs. Helena Hutchinson. I mean, we don't have all the evidence, but I really wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that we start getting some testimony, some eyewitness testimony suggesting that somebody acted very irresponsibly on that movie set. And it led to what we saw. It could possibly be Mrs. Gutierrez Reed. It could be the other name that was mentioned. Let me find that name. It could be Mr. David Halls, or it could be Mr. Alec Baldwin. Someone is probably going to get in big trouble here. And from my understanding, initially, he was being charged with, I think, a minimum mandatory sentence of 18 months, but I think the new charges bring him up to possibly facing 5 years in prison. Now he's a celebrity. He's probably got the greatest legal counsel you could imagine. And so I highly doubt he's gonna get 5 years, but he might get something. And so the Trump curse, I guess, strikes again. But let's really wrap this up. And I'll tell you where I get frustrated here. Obviously, there was criminal neglect. It's inexcusable to be mixing live ammunition with dummy ammunition, to be messing around with lethal weapons. That's one thing, but what really frustrates me is that Alec Baldwin knew all this. He had a live round in his belt. There were other live rounds on the movie set, clearly they were using those live rounds. And then he, as we understand, allegedly accidentally pulled the trigger and ended a young 42-year-old woman's life, brutally murdered. There's no other way to describe it. And in response, instead of being remorseful, trying to repent, telling the absolute truth that he was irresponsible, that people were acting irresponsibly, and that something terrible on the set happened, he's just trying to save his own behind. He's ducking. He's skating. He's hiding. Don't look at me. He's pointing the finger at everybody else. He wants everyone else to go down. He wants to save his own behind. That, to me, is just frankly disgusting. It shows zero ethics, zero morals, more Hollywood sociopathic behavior. He's trying to save his own skin and avoid any type of culpability and just let his lawyers handle it in a situation like this. You know, what I think would be a whole lot better and would probably go a long way in protecting you from harsh prosecution: telling the truth, being honest, being remorseful, admitting that something went wrong, that mistakes were made, because regardless, the truth is going to come out here. It's going to come out. There was a lot of people on that set. Some people are going to squeal, some people are going to speak, and they're going to be telling the prosecutors to be honest. They already probably told the prosecutors, and that's why, you know, it's leading to pretty significant criminal charges here. But eventually the truth is going to get out. And that truth is going to be used against you in a court of law. And so you'll look a whole lot better having told the truth, having been remorseful, than you will try to duck and avoid any type of responsibility, culpability, just try to save your own behind and throw everybody else under the bus. I have a very hard time believing that Alec Baldwin did absolutely nothing wrong being in possession of a loaded weapon with live rounds and a live round in his belt. I mean, it's bad enough that they had live rounds on the set to begin with. It's just not the place for that. If you're going to a shooting range or you're in the middle of the desert, and you're there specifically for sports, shooting and target shooting, It's one thing everyone's being incredibly responsible, guns are being aimed at the floor or in the sky and you're shooting at targets. It's another when you have weapons and you're aiming them at each other and you're acting. You're on a movie set and you're bringing live rounds there and playing around with guns. It's inexcusable, and it's the Trump curse. Alec Baldwin tells us Donald Trump is such a bad guy, but you know what Donald Trump didn't do? You know what he hasn't been caught doing? He hasn't been caught with live rounds and having accidentally taken someone's life by shooting them like point-blank range on a movie set and then lying about it and blaming everybody else to save their own skin. The Trump curse strikes again. The people who tell us they are the epitome, the pinnacle of compassion and virtue, end up always being the sociopathic man. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Open Source News. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a thing.